Welcome to Pure Hustle Podcast. I'm Mike.
And this is Rolando, and we're on episode 421, and this one is an update episode.
That's right. This is our update episode, and we love our update episodes because it's where we get a chance to update you, the listener, with what's going on in our life reselling-wise, what's going on in the reselling world at large, and maybe most important, we get to give you some of the spicy bolos, things you should be on the lookout for while you're at garage sales, thrift stores, Facebook Marketplace, all the places that you're sourcing. We've got the bolos for you. So yeah, Orlando, how's it going, man?
Do we want to continue the episode after that? Do we want to start over?
No, you're good, man. You sneezed. It's all right.
All right. Keeping it real here, huh? Well, I don't know. eBay is like all over the place for me, and I've been saying this for a long time, and I just got to keep it real. Now it's been good. I'm not going to complain. It's one of those things that you don't realize how great it is to sell on eBay until you're gone for a few days and you keep getting sales. Now, I will say eBay lately has been really kind of like, I don't know what's going on. Like I'll list and list and list and list and list, and then I'll go away for like 4 days and I'll put my store on vacation and I'll get like hardly any sales. But then I won't list while I'm away, and then I'll come home and then I get like a day full of sales. And I'm like, what happened? Like, did something have to catch up? Did people just finally decide to start buying? I don't know. So that's kind of how my world has been lately. It's just kind of, I'm just going with it. I always tell people with eBay, even in the slow season, just keep moving because things will rebound eventually, and things have kind of rebounded here and there. I do think right now we're still in the stage of like, it's really tough to get high dollar sales. I'm so used to having high dollar sales. And I had one the other day and it was like, wow, this is amazing. A $200 sale. Cause it's been so long where I've had every day that I've had that. There was times back in the day where that was like consistent. And so now I'm very grateful for those. It could be twofold. It could be one, I just have sourced a bunch of junk. I don't think that's the case. Or two, it could be that just people's buying habits have changed, right? Who knows? I'm just trying to figure that out. But yeah, things have been okay. Garage sales have been interesting in the fact that I'm very selective right now, right? Because I'm trying to figure out what's going on with my store. I've always been paying attention to sell-through rate, but now I'm buying stuff that I believe is trending, right? So, for example, right now, I have no problem picking up, let's say, whether it could be, some manga, or it could be some video games, or it could be some collectible toys like that I know have very high sell-through. Like, I have no problem picking those items up. But items that I see that only one has sold in the last, let's say, 90 days out of, let's say, 10, I just won't pick it up. I'm just done. I used to pick up a lot of stuff on these garage sale routes, and now I'm getting less and less just because I don't know what's going on, but I got to tell you, I can't do this whole waiting game for stuff anymore because I feel like the more I have with these items that take longer to sell, the slower things will continue to get. And so I'm just trying to revamp my store there. At the same time, though, it's been kind of interesting just because, on these garage sales that I go out, this is why I tell people that I do part-time, go to garage sales. Like every weekend I spend $200 or $300 or $30. I'll make that money back within a day or two with a couple items. And that's kind of the way you want to do it. I didn't show footage this last Saturday because I didn't think it was worth people's time. But I picked up some Planet vs. Zombies plush. I don't know if you remember that video game.
Yeah.
And then and those are actually go for good money. I picked up some Wi-Fi routers, and I ended up picking up a bunch of old like VHS, like Yamaha motocross tapes. I spent only $25 that day, and I sold one Planet vs. Zombies plush for $30, and I made all my money back instantly, right? So everything's profit, right? The week before, I picked up a whole bunch of hockey gear from somebody, and it was like their whole like hockey collection. Like it was like 2 or 3 pairs of skates. It was like 10 hockey sticks. It was 2 or 3 pairs of gloves. Just a whole bunch of stuff. And I remember he wanted $200 originally for it, and then I kind of said, I'm taking a risk. Like I don't ever buy hockey stuff, and I sell on eBay primarily. I'm not a big fan of the local game, but maybe I'll come back and buy all this stuff later. And I think I shared the story already. And, he said he was going to donate it. So eventually I got him down to $60. And sure enough, I sold one of the pairs of gloves for $65 and I paid for everything. So I want to encourage people out there when you're sourcing, try to find those items that you can sell quickly so you can make your money back, because then you're not losing, right? I think one of the issues that happens with reselling is we go out there and, we'll spend $300 and we'll buy a whole bunch of stuff, and either A, will take too long to list it, B, the sell-through rate wasn't great or whatever, and you end up, maybe within a week or two, you sell one of the items for $100. And then you do this, right? You do this, like, let's say 5 days a week, right? You go to the thrift store, you consistently do this. You do this for a month straight. Then think about how much you accumulate of items that just aren't selling, and then it slows your store down, and then you have a cash flow problem, right? So I'm trying to kind of end that. Those of you that have been listening for a while, I am I am moving. I'm trying to keep it not out there in the public, but I am moving. I am moving soon in a few months, and so I'm looking to move a lot of my inventory, and at the same time, I think this is a perfect opportunity for me to change my model to one where I have less items in my store and I'm selling things a lot faster, because I really do think that's the way to go for me. I enjoyed having the massive store and it was great, but now I'm kind of I have too much stuff that I should have never picked up, and so that's been kind of what I've been dealing with lately. But I'm always learning. I'm always figuring out what to pick up, what not to pick up. And I'm excited about kind of switching gears a little bit. Maybe it's adapting. Maybe it's Orlando just finding now that, hey, he's moving, finding the opportunity to kind of switch up his store. But I want to change. The thing is, with reselling, you can do this till your dying day. And my goal is to do this to the end, whether it be full-time or whether it be part-time. The reality is you can continue reselling. But the key component of it is that you have to make sure that you adapt. And, I'll be honest with everyone, and I've said this for a long time, even though I do get some hate in the reviews or comments sometimes, is that it's just one of those things where I've learned that in this last year or two, I've had to switch things up a bit. Now, if the economy begins to boom in the next year or two, I feel that will mask a lot of things, right? I think that's what a lot of people experienced right after 2020, is that they got in, they bought a lot of stuff they shouldn't have bought, they sold, they did really well. And so the skills necessary to be a good reseller, a lot of it was masked for a lot of people. They didn't need to really, source selectively. They didn't need to be good about the pricing. They didn't need to make sure they provide the best customer service because sales were coming through. Where now, as things are moving forward, that's more of seeing, hey, who's actually going to cut it through and make it through 24 into 2025. So that's where I'm at. So how about you?
Yeah, things have been going pretty good for me. I've kind of focused this last week quite a bit on listing. I have a lot more things not listed than I realized. When I moved, a lot of things ended up in totes, and so I thought I had all of my unlisted stuff. Well, I did have all my unlisted stuff in one location, but there's a few totes I hadn't really gotten into for a while, and I've started going through them and realizing I've got to just get this stuff listed. And I've got a lot of really high value items in there, which is nice because I feel like my listing procedures have gotten much better and more refined over time. I'm quicker at it, and I'm able to list items more closely to what they're going to sell. And so I'm selling things a lot of times within the week of listing them, as opposed to, listing things or things that have been on my shelf for a long time, which either were bad buys maybe, or they were just, I priced them too high because it was a couple years ago and you could kind of sit and wait. So just trying to get some stuff listed, which has been nice. I've also started to run sales, which I haven't typically done a lot of. Coupons and sales are things that I don't do a ton of. I typically will just revise my listings to a more competitive number, right? Like I want my price to be competitive. And so you figure if I've got something for $50 but they're selling for $35, I'm just going to lower the price to $35. But I think there's something to be said for going through your listings. And what I've been doing is finding items that have watchers on them. And those are the ones that I'll run sales on. So I'm not doing mass sales like you've done in the past where it's like full categories. or full, everything from a certain time frame. I've done a little bit of that in the past, but right now what I'm really focusing on is items that have watchers, because as I've been buying a handful of things off of eBay recently, doing some more eBay to eBay arbitrage, I've realized that things that I've looked at or I've watched, maybe because I just want to see if it's going to sell, or I'm like interested and I might come back to it later. If it gets put on sale, even if they don't give an offer, but I'll get a notification. So my thought is, instead of just relying on those ability to send offers, which can be very effective, I want to push it back up into people's minds that, hey, I've got this item. So I'm not doing massive sales. I'm not doing 50% off sales like you've done in the past. I'm just doing like 10 or 15. Yeah. Still doing, I'm just doing like 15% off sales. So all my prices right now are already competitive. So I figure an extra 15% off, as opposed to just putting that into increased promoted listings, which I have a feeling, my gut feeling is that promoted listings will do better than just an increase in sale, because eBay will push it a little bit more. But I think there's also diminishing return there, right? I don't know if, if 5% is kind of the going rate, if you push it up to 20% promoted listing, your ad rate, I don't think you're necessarily going to see that much more of an increase. So there is going to be some diminishing returns there. So I think that running sales is a decent alternative. The other thing, kind of big news in my life right now, is I got my ham radio license.
Oh, what? That's so random.
It's not, though, because I've talked about buying some ham radio stuff on the podcast before, and what I've realized is I pretty much have only found ham radio stuff at estate sales. That's pretty much the only time I ever see ham radio stuff. I almost never find ham radio stuff on Facebook Marketplace. And maybe there's some Facebook groups, but I just never joined any Facebook groups. Almost never find it on Craigslist. Occasionally I'll find like CB stuff. I don't know a lot about CB. I don't know a lot about ham right now either. I just have my technician license now. But I kind of got interested in ham radio again after, what happened with the hurricanes, and just kind of, I'm not a prepper by any means, but I do want to, have some supplies at the house. And, if anything happens, if things get crazy, it's just nice to have, some basics, some food and water and things to protect yourself and things to be able to communicate with others. And so I was like, you know what? The kind of cheapy ham radio that you can get on Amazon, they're called Baofangs. They're kind of looked down upon in the reselling community, but I've seen a lot of people on X, right after the hurricane saying like, get these, everybody should have these. And a lot of people got upset saying, you have to have a ham license, which you do technically to use them, to transmit on them. You can receive, if it's an emergency, like a life or death emergency, the FCC doesn't care. You can transmit on it. But, there was a lot to learn. I got this thing in the mail and I'm looking through it and I'm learning a little bit about ham radio. And this isn't just something that an average person could buy and then use in the case of an emergency if they haven't practiced and learned how to use it. So I went and I took the test. And one of the things I learned while I was going through the ham radio classes and kind of learning how to operate ham radio is you can't sell things on like over the air on ham radio. You can't like, hey, I can't run my eBay store off ham radio, basically. Or I can't do like political ads and stuff. But, and here's the exception that the FCC allows, is if you're selling ham radio equipment over ham radio and it's not a regular occurrence, like it's my 5 o'clock ham auction, but it's something you just, I'm in a ham club with other people or something. And I'm like, hey, I've got this thing, does somebody want it? Or, oh, you have this, you want to trade? And just from listening over the last few days on ham radio, I've discovered why I'm not finding ham stuff on like local deals on because they sell to each other, right? Huh. It's a pretty tight community. Yeah. And for the most part, it's mostly older gentlemen who are involved in ham radio. Things have changed so much that, it's kind of a dying and lost art. But at the same time, as new people get into it, there is just an insane amount of equipment that's out there. I mean, I remember I've gone to some estate sales and there's just rooms full of it. And I'm trying to figure out what's what. And, I'll buy only one or two things. But probably the only reason they're showing up at an estate sale is this person has passed away. They had nobody to pass it on to, or they didn't know they were going to pass away, so they didn't trade it or sell it on over the ham nets. So I'm kind of looking forward to the opportunity of being a part of that community, but also having the opportunity of using ham radio as a way of doing a little bit of sourcing. Not that that's my primary goal. I don't want any hams out there to get upset with me thinking that I'm just, that's my only goal. But at the same time, if I can, listen to people as I'm learning, buy equipment, because pretty much every hobby that I get into now, I let reselling pay for, right? Like if I'm going to get into a hobby, I'm going to be buying stuff. I know now what's good and what's not. It's like learning a niche. So I can buy things, flip what I don't need, keep what I want to keep, and grow my collection that way, almost without spending a dime. And my thought is I can do the same thing with this. I can grow my own collection of stuff while also getting things that I don't necessarily need, knowing that I can connect this equipment to, ham enthusiasts across the globe who might not necessarily be in my local area and didn't hear that, ham selling that item. So I'm kind of excited about that as a potential sourcing opportunity to grow in another niche. And I think, I could be wrong, but I've got a really good feeling now that that's why you're not seeing this stuff sold at garage sales, and you're not seeing this stuff sold too much in thrift stores or on Facebook Marketplace. Even on eBay, there's a lot that goes on eBay, but most of it's like very vintage stuff, because I think a lot of times these people are keeping it within their community. So I think there's a potential market for me there.
It's funny you bring that up, because that's what I deal with the Department 56 community here. I used to pick up, remember you even picked up, like you had a massive haul of Department 56, a haul like you had. Do you remember that one? I don't know. How many pieces did you pick up? It was like a ton.
I don't know. It was hundreds.
It was, your car was packed, right? And I've had multiple car packed Department 56 pickups, but that's non-existent here in San Diego now. And what's happened here is the Department 56 Club in San Diego, what they've learned is that they can get more money on eBay for it, or they just trade with one another. Because I remember I had connections to the club, and I used to have them reach out to me whenever there was pieces that they kind of didn't want to keep anymore, and I was a buyer for them. And then they just stopped calling. They just stopped reaching out. And I remember one of my last visits there, they had talked about how now they all figured out how to do eBay. They figured out they could get more money for it, and they kind of just began to trade with one another, and that kind of closed off, right? So now what I do is, if I picked up some Department 56 that's super collectible, because there are some that are very collectible, I'll reach out to them and I'll sell it to them instead of selling it on eBay or that platform, because there's that market there. But, two different worlds, but kind of the same story in both of the worlds. So very,
So, maybe the takeaway with that is, I don't expect many of our listeners to be excited necessarily about ham radio, but it does explain that market. But I think, like you said, with the Department 56 market, and we've had other people comment in the past or send us emails that Facebook groups, like if you want to really learn about a niche and then potentially do some sourcing it for a niche, Facebook groups can be great, or other ways that, like clubs, if you can get into some kind of a group chat for that niche. And again, you're not going to be able to do this for everything, but if it's a hobby niche, that's probably where you really want to get tied in, because you're going to be able to, one, learn a ton, and then you're also going to be able to do some sourcing and selling that way as well.
No, I agree. All right. Hey, before we move forward, I just want to talk about one of our awesome, companies that we talk about a lot. It's My Reseller Genie. My Reseller Genie has been incredible for me. I just recently had to submit my taxes, and guess what? It was fine, because I had My Reseller Genie that was able to import everything from 2023. It was also able to, put together the cost of goods sold. It was able to get all the shipping fees and everything. And so it made things a lot easier. I just handed over the information to my tax professional, and they took care of it. So if you haven't checked out My Reseller Genie, it is software for resellers, by resellers, for resellers. And you can get 15% off the first month. Just go down below, go to the link, and put our code Pure Hustle, all caps. Again, that's Pure Hustle, all caps, at My Reseller Genie. And you'll get 15% off the first month, and you will not have to stress as much about the bookkeeping of your reselling business. All right, so random stories. Now, I don't have anything crazy as far as random stories, but I want to continue reminding people how awesome the international shipping program is. Because they still have not done a thing where, like, hey, if somebody doesn't like it or somebody wants to return it, that they expect you to accept the return. So, for example, I had a bunch of manga that sold, and unfortunately on the item specifics, I did not check it, and it said that it was in English and it was actually in Japanese, and ended up selling for over $100. It made it to his destination, and just before it made it, they messaged me like, "Hey, I saw everything. I wasn't aware that these items were in Japanese because the item specifics had said it was in English. What should I do?" And I said, "Well, I'm so sorry about that." And again, this is also a reminder to check your item specifics. Don't just you do like Orlando and do a quick listing and just move forward trusting that everything is good. And I said, "Hey, just open the return when you get it." And sure enough, they opened the return. And I saw the case open, then I saw the case closed, and it said eBay will return the buyer without any cost to you. And it was all good. I was all good, right? And that actually, I would say it's my fault, but I'm kind of not a fan of item specifics. How I'm hoping that in time with AI, as the AI develops, that it'll catch things if they don't match up with the headline or they don't catch up the image or the picture. Right? Because right now, eBay is developing a way that you can just post pictures and it'll fill out everything for you. Right? So I'm hoping the inverse will happen where I also is able to verify. But lately I've had a lot of returns, and I always tell people, even when you get, and when I say a lot, I'm talking about I've had 3 in the last month, which is a lot for me. Right? Even when things were like booming for me, and I was selling, over 1,000 items without a problem, I still would only get like 3 or 4 returns, right? And usually these returns are things that I expected. I find that with camera lenses, I get a lot of returns because for a reason, even though I put the specifics, maybe Mike, you can answer this. People are like, it doesn't fit on my camera. And I'm like, I don't know how that's possible because all the information was there, right? I find with vintage jackets, that's the case for me. Sometimes the jackets, they fit either too small or too large. And this is why it's important to put measurements. But even when you put measurements, people will return. And then vintage items, electronics, it may work well for you. And by the time it gets to the person, something happens. It's just the cost of doing business. But I want to remind people, returns are a good thing. It helps, multiple reasons. It helps protect your feedback score because chances are that person is less likely to create a negative feedback if they can return the item. eBay, now they said in the last time I called, which it seems like they're changing a little bit, like they said at eBay Open, is if you offer free returns, you are protected from negative feedback. And they told me word for word on this last one. So when I called, they just removed the feedback, and that was fine. And then on the other end, it allows buyer confidence, right? People are more willing to buy your item knowing that if anything goes wrong, they can return it. So that's just my random story there. And now, I got to deal with, it's $100 and something, $200 something in returns, but it's just the cost of doing business.
Well, that it is.
I don't like it, but it's all good.
No, it's nobody likes cost, right? The cost is not the good thing. All right, so my random story is kind of just thinking through a negotiation tactic that we've talked about when we did our Never Split the Difference book review. And I think I keep using the term anchor when I refer to this negotiation tactic, but I think the actual term from the book is the range. And the purpose of the range, like for instance, if you're at a garage sale and the person won't give you the first number, we always talk about getting that first number from them. If they won't give you the first number, what you could do is you could offer a range, right? And let's say the most you'd want to pay for the item is $20 and they won't give you a number. Well, you don't want to say $20 right off the bat because then they're going to, well, how about 25? And then now you're already paying more than you wanted to. Also, you don't necessarily want to just give the lowest lowball number possible and say like, oh, $5 because, they might be offended. It doesn't always work that way either. So a lot of times an effective strategy is to give them a range, right? Where if you were to say, I don't know, I was thinking $10 to $20. Now they've heard a low number and they heard a high number. So that high number sounds really good to them compared to the low number, right? Because now they're hearing both. And so when you say 10 to 20, they'll go, oh, okay, 20, because they're thinking they've got a choice to make. 10, 20. Well, I'm not going to take 10 for it. I might as well take the 20. So the range can be effective. And I was starting to think of how this can be used on eBay when you do an auction. Now, when you do an auction on eBay, one of the features you can do is the buy it now. Buy it, or where they can just pay for it. So let's say you got it on auction, you started at $1, but you set they could pay for it right now and buy it for $50. Okay, You don't want to do that if you don't know the value of an item and you think it could skyrocket. If you're like, this could be like $1,000 item, I don't know. You don't want to set a buy it at 200 because you want that bidding war to get there. But if you kind of have an idea, if you're like, these typically go for around $100, instead of setting your buy it now at 100, you can almost create that false range by maybe starting your bidding at 70 or starting your bidding at 50 or wherever you're starting your bidding at, but set the buy it at 150 or a little bit above what it might normally go for. Because then in your mind, you know, if it does get into a bidding war, it's probably not going to go much over 100 anyways. It's not going to reach 150. But by setting that number there, I have a feeling that, and I've started doing that with some of my items. I've started running a few auctions, that you might be able to push the bidding war a little bit higher because they see that number, and that number to them, anything that they buy it for under that, they've got a deal, right? They're like, this was really $150, but I was able to snag it for 123. Yeah. Even if, you know, $100 would have been, you know, kind of the normal going rate for that. And those are just, you know, example numbers. But you see how that range effect by setting a little bit higher number instead of a low number, but setting a little bit higher number as your buy it option, knowing that it's probably not going to be bought for that. So you're kind of taking that off the table. You're taking somebody's going to just buy it at this, but you're just using that as like a tool to maybe push the bidding up a little more because people think as long as I'm getting it for under that price, I got a deal.
No, I agree. I've done that. Whenever I've done auctions, I've done that multiple times. And yeah, in the end, you know, I have never had anybody outright buy something, but I've had some bidding wars here and there. You know, so, and I think part of it is due to that. So yeah, I think it's good.
Yeah. So anyways, I've got a handful of items that are running an auction right now. They'll end on Saturday. And so fingers crossed that I end up getting what I'm hoping for out of those. But my thought is, speaking of auctions and random stories, I've got so many items that have been in my store forever. My wife and I were talking about it. I think we're going to go through maybe categories and just say like shirts, and just do like one weekend where we say like, okay, this weekend we're going to put them all on auction and maybe start them at $5 just because they've been sitting forever already. And knowing that maybe if we run a 7-day auction next Saturday, we're going to be busy packing stuff. But if we could sell 20 of these shirts that have just been sitting here, that's a good way of cleaning out. So instead of just running sales, I think we're going to kind of auction off categories at a time just to get that extra cash flow running.
No, auctions are great. Auctions are great to move stuff. I do wonder, you know, how much, and you know, I don't know if somebody's able to do this one day, but how much you get in comparison to Whatnot when you run an eBay on auction, right? So, like, you know, on Whatnot, we know that the bar is pretty low, right? Like stuff sells depending on who's in the room, right? Where eBay, you have access to the entire world, right? So I wonder what the difference is, right? I do think with eBay auction, unless you have something special, generally you're going to sell it for the same price that you paid for it, right? You'll get that thrift store price. It's very rare that you will get, you know, let's say a shirt that you paid $4 for that you'll get $20. Like you'll probably get like $8 or $9 for it at the most, right? And it's the same thing on Whatnot. I just wonder what the comparison would be. So I don't know. We'll have to wait and see how those go. And again, it's always good to have auctions because I do believe they do trigger your store as you're converting more and having more sales. Can't say for sure, but I know a lot of resellers that do auctions just to make that happen consistently. So, all right, let's talk about some important topics that are taking place out there.
Let's do it. Fee-free selling for private sellers in the UK. The eBay app is improving, and clothing sales continue positive growth. All of this and more on Reseller News. Orlando, take it away.
Okay, so I think I finally understood what the difference was between private sellers and commercial sellers in the UK. It's kind of interesting because it's not like here in the United States where like we don't have to really do much. Right. I mean, if we want to, we can get a seller's permit. Right. You don't have to get a seller's permit unless you have an LLC. You don't have to do an LLC. Like you can run a full-fledged 6-figure eBay reselling business and not have to jump through any hoops. But in the UK, you do have to jump through hoops. And those of you that are listening to us from across the pond, please correct me if I got this wrong. But I did do some extensive research because I wanted to make sure I didn't buy anybody for this info. I brought this information. But so in the UK, what eBay has done, okay, is they actually beginning of the month they removed selling fees for all private sellers in the UK. And so people are like, oh man, is that coming here to the United States? No more fees. But that's really irrelevant to us because what it means in the UK is just the person that randomly gets up and they're like, oh, look at this Disney hat. I should list this Disney hat. And then a week later, they're like, oh, you know what? I have this homeschool book and I need to sell this homeschool book, right? It's just those random like sales. And it's not somebody that is intentionally going out there and sourcing to sell on eBay like you and I do. And it's interesting because when I was researching it, like you have to self-identify yourself as a commercial buyer, but then eBay tracks it. And if it seems like you are running a business, eBay will force you into that eBay business category, and you have to pay selling fees for the items that you sell right now, right? The whole thing is that eBay has extended who can sell this for no fees in the coming months. It used to be just certain categories. So I'll read here. This is from Channel X that talks about selling on social marketplaces. It says eBay has a course just introduced free selling with no listing for final value fees for consumer buyers, along with changes we highly approve of, such as introducing an eBay balance, letting sellers use their earnings to shop on eBay. And so they're doing all these things to try to help, boost more people listing things on eBay. They're looking at it as like, hey, there's this huge market of people that are just randomly looking to sell, which is kind of interesting. Right? Isn't this interesting? Because the push here on our side is enthusiastic buyers.
No,
but what
enthusiast buyers? We got corrected on that.
Oh, is it? So my bad. Did really?
Yeah, no, but it makes so much more sense, right? An enthusiast buyer. It's not that they're enthusiastic, like they're excited, but they're an enthusiast in like a hobby.
Okay. My bad. All right.
No, it's not just your bad. Like, we both have been saying that wrong, but that does clarify some things.
Okay, but isn't it interesting though? Like in the sense that enthusiast buyers would be the business sellers that would cater to those people, right? Where in the UK, they're removing the fees for the people that probably won't get enthusiast buyers, right?
No, I don't know. I don't think I just don't think it's a big. I mean, because they want people on there, right? Like they just want people on the platform. But I think it makes sense in a way, like if you were, for instance, to use Venmo, okay? If you use Venmo and I bought coffee for you and I paid for it, and so you're just Venmoing the money to pay back or whatever, those things, there's not fees on it. But if you use Venmo as like a business and you've got a certain number of like back and forth and you're constantly receiving payments and it looks like you're receiving payments, Venmo will then start charging you, right? And because that's how they make their money. They make their money off of that aspect of it. So yeah, absolutely, it makes sense that they wouldn't want to go free, no fees from their businesses, because probably 95%, 90% of their income is coming from that. So they could cut the other fees and it won't be as big of a hit for them in that. But then it also encourages people to use the platform more. If people are selling on eBay, they're probably going to be buying on eBay. So it seems like a pretty smart move for me.
All right. Well, and who knows? Obviously eBay is going to do what's going to bring them more money, right? The question is, how long will this be? Kind of like, remember the no fees for shoes that sold over 100? How long we had that? And I thought it was going to be a permanent thing, and it wasn't permanent. It got pulled, but it brought a lot of the sneakerheads over onto eBay. Now, this was the part that I thought was interesting, and we actually talked about this in our live recently, this idea of eBay following the trend of buyer-facing fees, right? That buyers pay fees. And it was in one of their SEC filings. It said, we're also planning to introduce a buyer-facing fee in the UK in the early 2025 alongside of buyer enhancements that provide additional value. There will be more we can share on our future plans at the Q3 2024 earnings and our global all-hands event. So I wonder, is this going to come to the United States? Are we going to be doing the same thing that Mercari and that Poshmark, like, are we going to start charging fees to our buyers? And so we'll just have to wait and see, you know. And we do talk about this extensively on our live, but there are some effects to that, right? At first, it sounds like, hey, this is great, like more money in our pocket, but there's also other things that take place as a result of that. So, anyways, just be aware. Have you noticed some of the improvements in the eBay app lately? There's some good things.
Like
We
which
talked
ones?
about the send offer changes. Remember that? I think I mentioned that before on the podcast.
Right.
But now, like, I like it how, and I wish it was somewhere else, but now you can, like, even check your performance on the app.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So you can check, you know, what your impressions are. You can check how they are 7 days, 90 days. You can do a custom thing. I think it's a great move. I think this is finally eBay realizing how much people do not like going to the desktop version, right? Because it just feels clunky when you got to go to the desktop version. And so I'm looking on this. I saw that I could track my performance. It'll show me my promoted listings. How right now, in the last 90 days, my promoted listings have been down 2.4%. My organic views have been down 20%. So, and then my external views, which is interesting, organic views off of eBay, they've been down 20%. But I remember when I checked 30 days over the 90 days, my external views, my promotional offsite, has gone, well, it's gone way down because I just don't do it. So be aware. It's interesting. You can still get external views even if you don't do promoted. So I wonder what happens if I do the, paying for the offsite. I've seen no one tell me that offsite promotions actually works. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the fact that the eBay app is improving. So make sure to check it out. I would always encourage, people whenever there's that question thing on the top right, or not on the top right, but there's a place somewhere on the app or on the desktop like, hey, let us know recommendations. Always put in comments, because I do think eBay has been listening. I don't know if they've been listening as far as the bigger picture of, like, promoted listings and immediate payment and all those things, but I definitely do think they've been paying attention when it comes to the app. The fact that we have Terapeak. Have you used Terapeak lately, by the way, on the app?
No, it's been a while since I've been on Terapeak.
Okay, so I finally have been using it, and I ended my WorthPoint subscription. WorthPoint is one of those things now I find that only if it's something that's really, like, long time, you're not going to find it on Terapeak, right? Because Terapeak can go up to 3 years, okay? And, chances of your item having at least sold in the last 3 years are pretty high. If I find that I don't, then you can always find, WorthPoint to find your item, but I just haven't been using WorthPoint, so it's actually been saving me that $27.
WorthPoint is great if it's unique, like very unique items.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But it used to be I had to use WorthPoint all the time because Terapeak, the only way to get onto Terapeak was, like, you had to, like, set up a website, like, kind of a home screen on your phone, and then you had to jump through all these hoops, where now you just go directly on the app. So it's been great. All right, hey, I came across this kind of website, and not website. I came across this news story about thrift stores, and I thought it was pretty interesting. So I wanted to share the idea of the statistics when it comes to thrift stores, what people do. This comes from worldmetrics.org. I thought it'd be good to talk on the podcast because we always think that when we donate stuff to the thrift store that it's going to stay at that thrift store. We always wonder, like, what happens to all the stuff. Like, lately, and it's improved, but there was a time when you can go to a thrift store and there was nothing. It was like everything was, like, from Walmart or Target. Like, there was nothing really to find to end up sourcing. And I thought, interesting. Okay, so here's some stats. This actually came out in July, but this was from worldmetrics.org. Insights about thrift stores. First of all, they said that 80% of thrift store revenue is reinvested into the local community. That's a good thing, right? That means that even the store that shall not be named is investing. And we always said that. I do think they do a good job of that. Same with the Salvation Army. But I found some of this other stuff was interesting here. It said only 20% of thrift store donations are resold in their retail stores. Only 20%. Right? So that could mean only two things. One of them is that they go online or they get thrown away.
There's also the bins, right?
Yeah, but that's still, okay, I guess so. But I would think that would mean their store still, right?
I don't know. I think their retail stores and the bins are different because they're considered an outlet.
Man, I wish there was a little asterisk so I can confirm that in here. It says, from the staggering fact that only 20% of donations end up back on the racks to the revelation that nearly 80% of items come from generous individuals. Thrift stores are not just about saving money, but supporting local communities. So, I don't know.
Yeah, they probably throw away a lot. Some go to the like bins, and then the rest are probably online. It'd be interesting if we could see the exact numbers.
I know. But, this goes back to what we were saying. I think like 2-3 years ago we said this, that thrift stores are now our competition, right? Because they are also sourcing. The difference between us and the thrift store is that stuff comes to them and they just source it. I don't know if you've been on the Shop Goodwill TikTok, but the Shop Goodwill TikTok, like you go in there and they'll show you. They're like, hey, we got these records and we handpicked these records because these are valuable. Or we got these video games, or we got this clothing. Like they tell you, like, hey, we are sourcing through this. So, just be aware when you're out there sourcing. I thought that was a interesting statistic, kind of like enthusiastic, but enthusiast, it is statistic. So, the average thrift store item is sold for about 75% less than its original retail price. Do you find that to be true, Mike?
Say it one more time.
The average thrift store item is sold for about 75% less than its original retail price.
Yeah, I mean, if they're saying averages, for sure. I mean, just think about it. You go and you buy a jacket for $5. That jacket could have been for $50, $60, $100 brand new. So, because they're talking about when it was originally purchased, not necessarily what it could resell for on eBay. So yeah, I would say most stores are 25% of the value on average. Yeah,
on average. Yeah, because I
mean, think about the book section. Like, just think books alone. Like, you buy a brand new book. Like, we have places around here that are like half price books, and so I go into them and I'm like, these are like still expensive because I can go to Goodwill and buy a book for $1. But if I go to this store, I'm paying half of whatever it says on the back, and this says on the back like $19. So I'm paying $10 for a used book, which is bonkers to me. But yeah, I mean, you figure if just books alone, like they typically sell anywhere from like $15 to $30 brand new, and Goodwill selling them for $1. So yeah, if you're looking at just averages of what they're selling, for sure.
Okay, no, I see that point. I guess if you zoom out, right, you have a better picture of the ability to be able to source and still find good items, right? If you have this narrow focus that like if there's no point in going to thrift stores, everything's overpriced, I'm not going to find anything, then chances are that's what's going to happen, right? But if you look at the numbers and you're consistent about sourcing, which I haven't gone to, when's the last time I went to a thrift store? It's probably been 3 months, just because I don't need to, because I get everything from estates, I get everything from garage sales. I do a little bit eBay arbitrage, but I guess if you have been sourcing thrift stores and you're like, I can't find anything, there may be something about you need to adjust the stores that you're going to. Maybe you just need to adjust the frequency. Maybe you need to adjust what you're trying to find, and maybe that's going to help you find what you need to sell, because that's what the statistics are telling us. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but the other thing too is the statistic that you gave is that it's selling for 75% off the retail value, right? When we're selling on eBay, we're not selling at retail value typically either, unless it's a collectible.
Oh, that is true. That is true. You're right.
So we might be selling at 50% retail value. So there's not a lot of wiggle room there when you're buying a lot of items, unless again if it's a collectible or something that they missed. We make the most money when it's like, hey, when these VCRs, these DVD VCRs first sold, they sold for like $50. I don't know. I'm just using that as an example, but I can sell for $100 now because they're rare and it's hard to find these and they don't make them anymore. But I got it for $5 at a Goodwill. So that's where we really make our money. But for most things, like even if you buy, like if you're just buying like name brand, like if you bought a Coach, for instance, if you bought a Coach purse at the thrift store, found a real one at the thrift store, and you got it for 50% off of its actual value from retail, you're probably not going to be able to sell it for much more than that.
It's true. Okay, well, I was encouraging, but also you got to be real about things. So I think that's it. So that's all I got for reseller topics. It's kind of, we're just waiting for the tidal wave of Q4, right? That's the thing that we're waiting for. I've seen a little bit of it. I'm anticipating it's going to pick up, especially as we get into November. And again, you and I have talked about, I think the time of deals. Remember how we talked about before how like kind of all the Black Friday deals kind of takes away from some of those eBay sales? Well, I think those things have already been completed, right? Amazon had its Prime Day. Target and Walmart both said they're not going to be open on Thanksgiving. And so I think that gives an opportunity for the secondary market to come in. So make sure you are listing your items. Hey, before we move forward, in case you don't know, we do have a Patreon. It's called Pure Other Podcast. And so if you haven't checked us out, it's a community of thriving resellers. And what I mean by that is you sign up for the Patreon for $5.55 a month. And then that gives you access to our Discord. And in our Discord, there's all kinds of resellers there, whether it be eBay to eBay arbitrage, whether it be storage units, whether it be like what I do with garage sales and estate sales. We've even had like private label people in there. We have all kinds of resellers from all different kinds of backgrounds. Some of them are pretty young in their 20s, just killing it, working 23 hours a day. And they have other people that are like, hey, I just need to do this part-time to be able to take care of my family, maybe pay some of the bills. But there's huge swath of knowledge in there. So if you haven't yet checked out our Discord, I encourage you to sign up for $5.55 a month. It's patreon.com/PureSoulPodcast, or you can go down below to the link and you'll be able to sign up for $5.55 a month. Also, if you haven't checked us out on social media, we are Pure Soul Podcast on all platforms except X. On X, we are Pure Soul Cast. And as always, you can shoot us an email at puresoulpodcast@gmail.com. That's puresoulpodcast@gmail.com. Or you can give us a call, 619-738-1170. That's 619-738-1170. And as always, thankful to all of you that listen to the podcast. If you haven't jumped on over, my goal is to be at 10K subscribers by the end of Q4 here. That is the hope. That is the dream. And so we are only, I think we're like 850 away, something like that, from 10K, which would be great. My goal is maybe when we get to 10K is when we begin to unlock merch. We have not sold merch, Pure Soul Podcast merch yet, and I think we're way overdue to do that, but I think it's about time here. And as always, thankful for all the iTunes reviews. Thank you for letting everyone know why you listen to the podcast and giving us 5 stars. So thank you to everyone. All right, we're ready to talk about some things that people need to be on the lookout for.
Yeah, you mean our spicy bolos?
Bolo. What's your bolo?
All right. So my bolo is I just bought a brand new knife because I'm going to be doing Thanksgiving dinner. I've been doing a lot of smoking, and I've got a lot of knives. I've got a nice little leather knife case that I got at the Crazy Hot Deals, and I've been buying nice knives over time. And I bought a decent one off of Amazon. It was like $40, and it's like a good for like slicing briskets and things like that. And I have some deboning knives. And I remember I was at a thrift store with my brother a while back, and he's not a chef, but he works in restaurant. He's a cook for a restaurant. And so he kind of knows good knives. And in fact, he brings his own knives because he's got better knives than the restaurant provides. And we were at a thrift store, and he's like looking through their knife bin, like their kitchen knives, and he found a couple of good ones. And of course, we've talked about things like Cutco in the past. We've talked about Wusthof in the past. But I've been doing a little bit of research, and I found a handful of Japanese knives in the past. It's not something you run across every day, but again, you always got to think about brands. I've found a handful of brands that I don't know how to pronounce their names, so I'm not even going to try it. But here's the key: if you see like some vintage knives, you don't know what's what. I mean, we've talked about some German brands, but if you find anything with like Japanese writing on it. I mean, Japanese not handmade, but Japanese crafted stuff in general is typically really high quality. But their knives go for a ton of money, even vintage, even kind of chip knives. So keep an eye out. A lot of times you go to a garage sale and you just see a bunch of dishes and some stuff around. That's typically the section you avoid. You're like, yeah, nothing good there unless there's some china that you know about. But take a look at the knives. And if you happen to find some of those Cutco, Wusthof, or specifically Japanese knives, take a look at the brand. You probably can't always pronounce all the letters that are on there, but now with Google Lens, it's easier than ever to like look up what a brand is or look things up or to translate something. So now that isn't a factor of like, well, I don't even know how to look this up. I don't know how to put these characters into Google. But you can just, boom, use Google Lens and you're good to go.
All right. No, I got to tell you, I've always seen people like I'll go to the thrift store and you see these people going through all the knives, and I'm like, I wish I had the knowledge, right? And but part of it is, just you have to apply yourself. Like if you take a good 30 minutes, you may give yourself a whole breadth of knowledge, right? Like kind of like your, tools to look out for a video that you put on YouTube, right? There was a lot of valuable knowledge, and so always find those opportunities. I just think Cutco. That's the only thing I think about. I haven't thought about other knives, and they do sell pretty well depending on the knife. So definitely keep an eye. All right, so my bowl. I feel like I've talked a lot about homeschool stuff, so I wanna kind of like, how can I just narrow it a little bit more? Is if you just find a homeschool manual, like the answer manuals, right? Those I find that sell way faster than all the other homeschool materials. And it was crazy, but I work with the homeschool community, and they were trying to get rid of stuff in their library, and they had like 3 huge totes fulls of homeschool books. And they're like, hey, we don't know what we're gonna do with these. Does anybody want them? And they gave them to the whole community. And I kind of waited. I said, hey, I'll be honest with you guys. I'm just gonna buy this stuff and resell. So if nobody wants it, I'll pick it up. If you're gonna donate it, well, no one wanted it, and so eventually it got to a place where it was just sitting there, and I ended up I did have to do a donation of like $1, and I picked up all these homeschool, like crazy, like amounts of homeschool materials, where there was math stuff like Saxon, or whether it was I don't know all the names, but if you look at for the little spiral bound stuff, right, the spiral bound teacher answer manuals, like those go for good money. And so I have sold so many answer manuals. It's just been crazy. I didn't think there was like a market like that. I mean, I've sold it before, but I never had like mass quantities of it to know that, hey, like people are really looking for these items, and they're looking for it year round, right? Because homeschool doesn't always follow like the normal school schedule, right? It's whenever people want to start it, whenever they want to stop. And so there's always people looking for those items. So check out for those answer manuals. Sometimes it's for nefarious reasons. I just found out about somebody who they like went on Quizlet, and they found the entire answer key to a homeschool book on Quizlet. So those kids were studying, and they knew exactly what was going to be on the test. So don't know, there's no way to verify that, but keep an eye out for homeschool answer manuals for some of the textbooks. So you sold some of those, right, Mike? I could be wrong.
I've sold quite a few various homeschool curriculum stuff for sure. Answer manuals, those are good. Student workbooks, if they haven't been written in, and you mentioned Saxon. Saxon's a great brand. So yep.
Yeah, actually, speaking of that, I actually have one of those like randomly on my YouTube desk.
Oh, dude, nice.
So there you go. You've probably seen that one before. So
yeah, I'm probably gonna end up doing Saxon with my oldest son when he gets a little bit older. We're doing a curriculum right now called The Good and the Beautiful, which is not quite as expensive, so I wouldn't consider that one as like a reselling one. But yeah, Saxon is like a go-to for sure.
Mm-hmm. All right, Mike, what are you looking forward to?
Well, Orlando, I'm looking forward to getting more of my stuff listed. I thought I had gotten through most of my death piles, and I just realized there's just a lot of things that are actually very valuable. Like I still have tons of VCRs or like
isn't that terrible? How long have you had those for, Mike? I'm not trying to judge you because I am guilty of the same.
I'm not answering that question.
Did you move from California to Texas with those?
Yes. I also have like what are they called? CCTV like cameras and recording systems for like people when they have security systems in their house. I have handful of the monitors or the cameras, the things that record them, almost like DVRs. So I need to get all that stuff listed, and I think I'm gonna just go the auction route, like I mentioned, with some of the things I already have listed. And I think I'm going to try and auction off some more of these things, because in my mind, it's like, okay, I might be able to get 200 for this item, but if I could sell it this week for 120, that's a win. I'm just gonna move it quick. I'm not gonna wait 6 months to potentially get that 200, because I've just gotten so much better at sourcing that when I do go sourcing, I'm picking up better items. And so a lot of the things that I have that might sit for 6 months to a year, which is one of the reasons I haven't listed it, I might take a huge discount on it in order to get it to move, just so I have that cash flow moving again. So yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to that. What about you, Orlando?
So isn't it funny though how we both like, and that's what I don't want to do. I don't want to move and take stuff that I should have already sold. Do you know what I'm saying? That's like, I totally get it with the DVDs, VCR, but there's good money in those. So, I thought about this segment of our show, and I go, I always try to find like something exciting, right? To tell people like I'm doing something new, right? But the reality in reselling is we kind of do the same stuff over and over and over again, right? That's kind of what it is. But, one of the things I mentioned this last time, and I'm still going to keep doing is I'm still downsizing because I'm going inside like my clothing totes, and I'll open one and there's like 1 or 2 items in there. I'm like, why is this? Like, how much space am I losing? Right? I'll go to shoes because I don't pick up shoes really anymore. And I'm like, how much space am I losing? So I'm looking to downsize. I want to get all my eBay stuff. It's okay if it's in the garage, but right now where I'm located, I have stuff in my podcast room where I'm speaking of now, and I have stuff in an eBay room. And I am looking to move everything into just one room and free up the podcast room. Because remember, Mike, when I first moved here, like my podcast room was pretty clean. Like I had the big photo booth, and I had a table, and I had some totes, and it was pretty good. And then over time, it just became this like catch-all for recent hauls, and it's still that. And I need to clean that up. And the nice thing is if, once I move, I'm moving in about, several months, is I would love that the eBay stuff isn't a big deal, that everything's just in totes. And when I get the moving company out here, they're just taking totes. I'm not having to go like, oh man, where'd I put this boombox, or where'd I put this inflatable? Like everything's nicely organized. So I still plan on transporting a lot of my goods. I'm still going to be reselling despite the move. But I want people to, I want it to be an easy transition. I think about how brutal it was 3 years ago when I moved to this location. It was terrible. It was just terrible. That's because I had a whole storage unit I had to move over, and I had to like fit it in a garage. And I remember the hassle it was. So I'm kind of looking forward to downsizing all that. And then, as always, like I really love garage sales. I really love getting out there, finding stuff. Unfortunately, this last community garage sale I went to 37 homes, and I only picked up stuff from 2 of them. Right. So I want that haul. I want the haul where I pull up and, I ask, hey, do you have any more of this? Or they have all these items and the car is full. I've not had a haul like that probably, I want to say, since like early summer. It's been a long time, maybe like May. And I'm just looking forward to something like that because that keeps you motivated, right? That lets you know that stuff is out there. But I just haven't found that. I don't know what your experience is in Texas, but lately it's been just resellers doing garage sales for a lot of it. So I'm looking forward to having those great scores out there. Hey, by the way, everyone, as you tune into the show, always feel free to comment. Let us know if you have questions. Appreciate every single one of you. Thank you to all of you that stayed to the end, whether it's on YouTube or the podcast. Hey, we're at the cusp of Q4. We are in Q4, but we haven't hit peak season, but peak season will be here before we know it. So make sure you're listening. Make sure you have everything organized. And with that being said, make sure to be real,
be relevant,
and be reselling. Peace.